Hi, my name is Riley, and my dad always tells me that I'm an adopted child, even though I look just like him in both looks and personality. The thing is, I love to draw, but my dad taught me math ever since I was a kid. He wanted me to run his business when I grew up. Riley, where are you? I hid under the table and put my hands over my mouth so my dad wouldn't hear me breathe. Riley, we have a math class. Stop hiding. Dad's face appeared right in front of me. He lifted the tablecloth and pulled my hand out. But Dad, can we do it later? At times like this, Dad would start explaining that he had a lot of work to do and didn't have time to play hide and seek with me. Then he would say he wanted to retire in peace one day, and only I would be able to replace him. So I had to study hard now. I looked wistfully out the window. The sunny summer day was beckoning me to take a walk. All my friends were probably busy doing that, while I was studying. I sighed and started drawing flowers in my notebook. When I was bored, I always did that. Dad came over to check his answer. He got angry, ripped out the page, and threw it away. No drawings during class. And it was like that every time. But I didn't listen and kept drawing. I had a few favorite characters. Dan was a handsome guy. He could play the guitar and was always saving everyone. There was also a girl named Melissa. I always drew her lush red hair and eventually even began to envy her. Also, Melissa had a best friend and an angry classmate. It was all canon. Somewhere around high school, my dad noticed I was spending too much time drawing. At least that's what he thought. Riley, I'm not giving you money for crayons anymore, he declared. Dad was just checking my math notebooks and saw the patterns between the problems. But Dad, why can't I do that? I really like to draw. It gives me joy. I think drawing is my calling. Dad thumped his fist on the table. We've talked about this 100 times, Riley. You should be running my company, not drawing stupid drawings. And for that, you have to study hard. So sit down and repeat that subject again. You have a lot of mistakes in it. I tried to argue something, but Dad threatened to deprive me of my pocket money if I didn't stop arguing. I sighed and picked up my notebook. At recess one day at school, my friend Mary asked me to draw her portrait. I opened my sketchbook and realized there were only 2 blank sheets left. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then I remembered that my father refused to give me money for sketchbooks and pencils. I'd have to save for lunch all week to buy a sketchbook. The cafeteria smelled so good, I began to have doubts. On one side of the scale was a new album, and the other side was a delicious lunch. My mouth was watering as I looked at the pie counters and the roast, but I pulled myself together and picked out the cheapest bun. After a couple of days, Mary noticed that I hardly ate anything at school. My stomach rumbled. I blushed and coughed so she wouldn't hear, but the act didn't help. Riley, what's wrong? Why aren't you taking your lunch? I was embarrassed. I didn't feel comfortable admitting to my friend that I didn't have any money. I tried to say something, but she interrupted me. She took me by the shoulders and looked into my eyes. Tell me the truth. Dad, he's mad at me and doesn't want to buy me an album. So I'm saving up for it, spending less on lunch. Mary let me go, and without a second's hesitation, split everything she bought herself in half. Help yourself, she declared. I threw my arms around her. Mary, you are the best. We sat down next to each other at the table and ate. I was so emotional telling my friend about the fight with my father. I suddenly hit someone with my hand. Hey, careful, someone said indignantly. I turned around. There was a strange girl standing in front of me. She had bright red hair and strange clothes. I'm sorry, are you new here? Yes, I came from the south. Do you know where I can find the principal's office? I've been looking for it all morning. The girl spoke with a strong accent, and it gave her a special charm. I decided to help her, to make it up to her. When we found the principal together, it turned out that the girl would be in my class. Then I can take it a class, I suggested. She smiled back at me. Right, I did not introduce myself. I slapped my forehead. I'm Riley. What's your name? Zelda. She shook her gorgeous hair and smiled at me. We'll be friends, I'm sure. That's how we met. At the time, I had no idea how much my new acquaintance would affect my life. We did become friends. The three of us went everywhere. Me, Mary, and Zelda. We emptied the stationery stores because Zelda liked to draw too. We went to cafes together. We bought date dresses. We had a lot of fun together. One day, the girls came to visit me. Zelda dug out my old sketchbooks, sat down on the floor, and began to undo them. I tried my best, but at one point, Mary collapsed on the bed without strength. I will never understand this subject, she sighed. I didn't understand math either for a long time, but then I got good at it. I tried to console her. Then Zelda spoke up. She asked me, pointing to a page in an album. Who's that? There are 50 pictures of these people. I was embarrassed and mumbled. I used to draw stories about these characters when I was a kid. I was embarrassed. When an outsider found out about my characters, they seemed silly to me. But Zelda came to love them. Cool, tell me about him. But then my room door swung open and an angry dad walked in. The girls immediately got quiet. They knew it was better not to see my dad when he was in a bad mood, so they quickly said goodbye and left. And my dad turned to me. Riley, are you doing crap instead of studying again? I always said that your girlfriends were just getting in your way. I forbid you to see them. I couldn't believe my ears, and I wanted to say something, but my father interrupted me. You're acting like a foster kid. He kept saying something else, but I wasn't listening anymore. The same word was going around in my head. Foster. If it's so important to you to paint, prove that someone needs your art. Go for it. You have a month. After that, he left, and I collapsed on my bed, flooded with tears. I was very hurt. The next morning, it was scary to look at me. My face was puffy from the night I'd spent crying, and I had dark circles under my eyes. Zelda and Mary were horrified when they saw it. I tried to fix it with makeup, but I wasn't very successful. What happened? What did your father say after we left? The girls were very worried about me. I explained the situation to them, and Zelda scratched behind her ear, thinking. Then she asked me to bring her all my old albums. I'll think of something tomorrow, she promised. She was not deceived. The next day during our lunch break, Zelda grabbed us by the arms and dragged us to the nearest cafe. There, she pulled out some of my drawings and her notebook. So, my dear, she began. I spent all of last night thinking and didn't do English because of it. If I get a bad grade, it's your fault, okay? So, let's move on. I consulted with my aunt, and she agreed with me. Anyway, you're going to draw some comics for her magazine. I'm confused. Me? What about? Zelda nodded at my drawings. About them. We'll come up with a story and a character, and then you put all your ideas down on paper. I think a couple of stories a month would be enough. But would your aunt be interested in that? I'm an unknown artist, and I don't think anyone would be interested in reading me. I'll help here, Mary said suddenly. You remember that my mother knows almost all the moms in town, don't you? She was. My friend's mom was involved in the charity events and knew almost the whole town, so Mary promised to ask her for help. As a result, all the next week, Zelda and I talked about my characters. And then I sat down to draw. My dad and Melissa went from childlike funny drawings to full-fledged characters. It inspired me so much. My dad wouldn't let me draw during the day, though, so I dutifully did my homework. Once, my math class was so boring that I fell asleep after I'd barely finished my assignments. Apparently, several hours passed before I woke up. When I opened my eyes and stretched, I felt terribly cold. I started looking for a blanket. I flew over a chair and stretched out on the floor, crying out in pain. Then I was quick to catch my breath, and be quiet, and listen. Luckily, I didn't seem to wake anyone. When I made sure everyone was really asleep, I turned on the light in my room and sat on the bed. I drew and drew until late at night, until I fell asleep right on top of my pencils. Riley, wake up! Someone shook my shoulder. I opened my eyes and saw my mother in front of me. What time is it? I was afraid I'd overslept because I'd forgotten to set the alarm clock. My mother reassured me. I woke you up on time. You're still on time, she said. She stroked my disheveled hair. Just put the pencils away before Dad throws them away. I walked into the classroom at the same time as the bell rang. When I sat down next to Zelda, she looked at me and shook her head. Did you sleep at all, dear? I nodded. Of course. Also, look what I drew. I laid out my drawings in front of my friend, and immediately, I got a light tap on the shoulder. Hey, whispered Mary. Actually, I want to see too. The girls were thrilled. Every day for a month, I devoted a few hours to drawing. Sometimes I even drew in class, and my efforts were not in vain. When Zelda's Aunts magazine came out, everyone loved my story, even without the help of Mary and her mom. My work became popular. Almost every day, someone told me they dreamed of seeing a sequel. A couple of times, they even called me to find out when the new installment was coming out. Riley! Zelda's aunt's voice came over the phone one day. Sales of the magazine have doubled. I just have to pay your salary, even though we didn't agree on that. After talking to her, I went down to my parents and put the magazine with my drawings in front of them. Mom, Dad, I did it. Dad sighed and hugged me. I'm sorry, I was wrong. It's great that you succeeded. You can do what you like. Of course, that was only the first step. Just a small one. But I was going to keep working. And now I've succeeded. My stories have become popular all over the world. Never give up on your dream and never give up. Remember, you can do it. You can do it. What is your dream job? Tell me in the comments and be sure to share this video with anyone who needs support on the road to their dreams.